The setting sun illuminated Chicago's skyscrapers, streaming through the window of Mary Williams' office. She was one of the most trusted accountants at her firm. Papers were neatly arranged on her desk, next to a smiling photo of her and her husband Richard. "Mary, you can go home now. You're still recovering, don't push yourself too hard," her colleague Janet said with concern. Mary smiled and shook her head. "I'm fine. Actually, work helps keep my mind off things." It had been 2 weeks since she returned from gallstone surgery. During her hospitalization, Richard had visited frequently for the first few days. But gradually his visits decreased, and he hadn't shown up at all for the last 3 days. Mary had accepted his excuse about important work commitments without question. Mary reflected on her marriage. 7 years ago, when she reconnected with Richard at a college reunion, she couldn't believe someone like him would be interested in an ordinary woman like her. Charming and sociable Richard was always the center of attention. In contrast, Mary was plain and lacked confidence in her appearance. "He chose me," Mary often reminded herself. Especially when she saw her sister Vanessa talking to Richard with her captivating smile every time they met. Since childhood, Vanessa had been treated as the beautiful one in the family. Shining blonde hair, charming blue eyes, and always fashionably dressed and sophisticated. Mary had always been in her sister's shadow with her brown hair and plain clothes. Leaving the office, Mary hurried home. Recently, Richard had been acting strangely. He had started password protecting his phone, and she had caught him making secretive phone calls late at night. "It's just my imagination," Mary tried to convince herself, but anxiety spread through her chest. When she opened the apartment door, silence greeted her. Richard apparently wasn't home yet. His recent overtime work had been increasing. Mary began preparing a simple dinner when suddenly her phone rang. It was a message from Richard. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up for me. Again." Mary sighed deeply. She took a bottle of wine from the refrigerator and poured herself a glass. The next morning, when Mary woke up, Richard's pillow was cold and untouched. While having breakfast, she wondered about her husband's whereabouts. He said there was a big project, she reminded herself. That afternoon, Mary was suddenly struck with a headache. Worried it might be a post-surgery complication, she got permission from her boss to leave early. On her way home, she stopped at a pharmacy to buy pain medication and hurried to the apartment. The moment she opened the front door, she noticed something was off. Richard's jacket was thrown over the living room couch. And then she heard a woman's voice coming from the bedroom. A passionate, intimate voice. Mary's heart nearly stopped. She knew that voice. She knew it all too well. With trembling legs, she approached the bedroom door and cautiously opened it. What she saw was Richard and Vanessa entangled in her bed. "What are you doing?" Mary's voice trembled. The two turned around, startled. After a moment of silence, Richard regained his composure and said, pulling the sheets closer, "Mary, listen. This is..." "No need to explain," Mary said coldly. "I understand everything." Vanessa, far from being ashamed, looked at Mary with challenging eyes. "How long?" Mary asked. "Several months," Vanessa answered nonchalantly. "While you were in the hospital, we..." "Since I was in the hospital?" Mary's voice cracked. While she was enduring pain in a hospital bed, her husband and sister were. Something broke inside Mary. Without saying anything, she returned to the living room, took out a suitcase, and packed the bare essentials: clothes, toiletries, her wallet and phone. Richard hurriedly dressed and appeared in the living room. "Mary, wait. Let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," Mary said without turning around. "I'll contact you through a divorce lawyer." "Calm down," Richard's voice contained irritation. "It's because you're always working and never understood my feelings. Vanessa is different. She actually listens to me. And And what? And, honestly, she's more attractive than you. At that moment, Vanessa appeared in the living room wearing a bathrobe. I'm sorry, Mary. But this is reality. Richard wants to be with me. Doesn't he deserve to be happy? Mary slowly looked at both of them. There were no tears in her eyes. Only cold determination. Get out. Both of you. This is my home too, Richard protested. Not anymore, Mary replied calmly. The apartment is in my name. Remember? Your credit score was too low, so we put it in my name. Richard's face reddened. He couldn't argue. It was true. Both of you, get out now, Mary repeated. Or I'll call the police. Richard and Vanessa exchanged glances, and reluctantly began packing their things. Before heading to the door, Vanessa turned back to look at Mary. There was something like pity in her eyes. Nobody's interested in Mary anyway, she whispered to Richard. Can't blame them. She's so plain, Richard responded, making sure Mary could hear. The two left laughing. Behind them, Mary closed the door and locked it. She collapsed to the floor and cried for the first time. 7 years of marriage and over 30 years of sisterhood had crumbled in an instant. That night, Mary sat alone in the dark room, contacting no one. Something was changing inside her. In the midst of this betrayal's pain, a new determination was beginning to emerge. I will never let anyone hurt me again, she silently vowed. Chicago's winter was harsh. 6 months after the divorce, Mary Williams was immersed in her work. The divorce mediation had proceeded surprisingly smoothly, with Richard signing without a fight. He was eager to start a new life with Vanessa. From Mary's office window, she could see snow falling. While reviewing audit documents, she occasionally unconsciously stroked the mark where her wedding ring had been. The wound was healing, but the emptiness remained. Mary, are you coming to the team dinner tonight? Her colleague Janet approached her desk. Sorry, I'm planning to work overtime today, Mary declined with a smile. Avoiding social gatherings had become a habit. Again? Janet frowned. You've been making the same excuse for 6 months. You need to get out more. Just as Mary was about to answer, the office door opened and someone walked in. A tall, broad-shouldered man confidently strode across the floor. He said something at reception, causing a buzz among the women. Is that? Mary gasped. Who? Janet asked with interest. Michael Johnson, Mary's voice was small. A friend from high school. Michael Johnson. Saying his name brought a flood of high school memories. He had always been kind and smart, Mary's chemistry lab partner. After graduation, he started a tech company and became a successful entrepreneur. Michael looked in Mary's direction and stopped in his tracks. Surprise crossed his face, quickly changing to a warm smile. Mary? He approached. I didn't know you worked here. Michael, it's been a long time, she stood up and shook his hand. His hand was warm and gentle. I'm back from Seattle on business. Planning to stay here for a few months, Michael said happily. Are you free tonight? How about dinner? We could catch up on old times. Mary hesitated for a moment. Though she'd been avoiding social gatherings, Michael's invitation was hard to refuse. Yes, that would be nice, she found herself answering unexpectedly easily. That night, dinner at an upscale Italian restaurant brought Mary a peace she hadn't felt in a long time. While Michael talked about his company and his travels around the world, he always listened attentively to Mary's stories. So, what happened with Richard? Michael asked over dessert. Mary froze for a moment, then took a deep breath and told him about the divorce. Anger flashed across Michael's face, but he maintained his composure. He wasn't worthy of you, Michael said quietly. You deserve a better life. Thank you, Mary smiled. But I'm okay. I've become stronger. I know, Michael gently touched her hand. You've always been strong. You just didn't recognize it yourself. Those words sank deep into Mary's heart. Over the next few weeks, Michael and Mary began seeing each other frequently. Art gallery visits, walks along the lake, evenings at jazz clubs. Michael's presence helped Mary rediscover her forgotten smile. You're beautiful, Michael told her one night under the moonlight. Don't lie, Mary looked away. It's true, Michael touched her chin, lifting her face. I've liked you since high school. But I kept quiet because you chose Richard. At that confession, Mary was speechless. There was no deception in Michael's eyes. A year after they started dating, Michael proposed to Mary at a restaurant overlooking Lake Michigan. He knelt and presented an antique ring. This was my grandmother's heirloom. I want you to wear it. Tears filled Mary's eyes. Along with happiness, memories of past trauma flashed through her mind. But I love you, including your past and your scars, Michael said with a serious gaze. I promise I will never hurt you. Mary took a deep breath and decided. Yes, I'd be happy to. As wedding preparations progressed, one thought wouldn't leave Mary's mind. One evening, she confessed to Michael. I want to invite Richard and Vanessa to the wedding. Michael looked surprised. Why? I want closure, Mary said, but her eyes harbored another emotion. Michael studied her for a long time, then quietly nodded. If that's what you really want. But I have one condition, Mary continued. I want to prepare a special slideshow. Michael's expression changed when he heard her plan. I understand, he took her hand. Tell me if there's anything I can do. I'll do anything for your happiness. Mary gave him a grateful smile. For the first time, she realized she was seeking liberation, not revenge. And she felt how reassuring it was to have Michael with her on this journey. On the morning of the wedding day, a quiet tension filled the top-floor suite at Chicago's Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Mary stood by the window, gazing at the glittering surface of Lake Michigan. She had spent many nights imagining this day. A day not of revenge, but of liberation. A day of promise to herself. Mary, are you ready? The makeup artist smiled. Let's start preparing the bride. Mary took a deep breath and nodded. Around her, bridesmaids in elegant dresses were laughing. Michael's sister Emily held her hand. Nervous? Emily smiled kindly. A little, Mary answered honestly. But in a good way. Hours later, Mary stood before the mirror in her pure white wedding dress. The simple, elegant A-line dress beautifully accentuated her figure, with delicate lace adding a touch of sophistication. Her brown hair fell in gentle waves, adorned with small white flowers. Mary, you. Emily's words caught in her throat. You're truly beautiful. Mary looked at herself and for the first time truly believed it. This was her new self. Strong, confident, and never again to be swayed by others' words. Guests are starting to arrive, Emily reported, looking out the window. And, look, they're here too. Mary approached the window and saw Richard and Vanessa who had just arrived at the hotel entrance. Her sister wore a flashy red dress, and Richard appeared in an expensive-looking suit. Both had sardonic smiles on their faces. Are you okay? Emily asked worriedly. Perfect, Mary smiled. Everything is going according to plan. The banquet hall was filled with about 400 guests. Michael's business associates and friends, Mary's colleagues and clients, and relatives were all gathered in elegant attire. The room was decorated in a sophisticated white and gold theme, with chandeliers casting a mystical light throughout the venue. Richard and Vanessa were deliberately seated at the back. They looked around, visibly unsettled by the venue's luxury and the caliber of guests. Upper-class businessmen and celebrities could be seen among the crowd. What is this? Richard muttered. I can't believe Mary could have such a wedding. That new guy must be rich, Vanessa snorted. But money can't make her beautiful. Music began to play and guests took their seats. Michael stood at the altar with his attendants, dignified and proud. His eyes were fixed on the entrance, full of expectation. The wedding march began to play, and Mary entered on her father's arm. Her appearance drew small gasps of admiration from the audience. Mary slowly walked forward, passing by Richard and Vanessa. She glanced briefly at them and simply smiled. Vanessa frowned at the sight. This was not the plain, insecure Mary she knew. The ceremony proceeded solemnly and beautifully. Many guests shed tears of emotion watching Mary and Michael pledge their love. The depth of their love was evident to everyone present. The reception began with the newlyweds' entrance, followed by toasts. Mary and Michael made rounds to each table, greeting their guests. Her smile was natural and filled with happiness. When they finally reached Richard and Vanessa's table, Mary looked at them with a composed expression. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "We were surprised you invited us," Vanessa responded sarcastically. "Congratulations on remarrying despite being so plain." Richard sneered and said, "I feel sorry for your new husband." Michael's face hardened momentarily upon hearing this, but he quickly regained his calm smile. "We're glad you could make it," he replied coolly. "We've prepared a special slideshow. Look forward to it." As the two showed confused expressions, Mary and Michael moved to the next table. As the reception progressed, after dinner, speeches, and the traditional father-daughter dance, the MC took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, are you enjoying this wonderful evening?" The MC's voice echoed through the hall. "Now, please enjoy a special presentation from our bride and groom." The lights dimmed slightly, and Mary and Michael stood on the central stage. Mary calmly surveyed the room, her gaze settling firmly on Richard and Vanessa. "Thank you all for gathering here today," Mary's voice was strong and confident. "We are truly happy to share our joyous day with you." Michael took her hand and gently squeezed it. "We've prepared a special slideshow. We want to share not just memories, but moments that became turning points in our lives." The MC took the microphone again. "And now, the slideshow." Images began to flow on the large screen. First, photos of Mary and Michael from their high school days. The two laughing in the laboratory, a shot from graduation. Then, time jumped to photos of them at the restaurant where they reconnected. Mary's expression held a calm determination. Her heart was quiet. She understood that what was about to happen wasn't just revenge, but a journey to truth. Looking at the screen, she squeezed Michael's hand more tightly. He looked at her and nodded slightly. The venue fell silent, all eyes focused on the large screen. After the photos of Mary and Michael's memories, the screen went dark for a moment. Then, new footage appeared. The caption, 3 years ago, appeared. The footage showed a car stopping in front of a hospital. Richard was clearly visible getting out. The date and time were displayed in the corner of the screen. It was the first day Mary had been hospitalized for gallstone surgery. Richard entered the hospital and came out after a while. He took out his cell phone and called someone. His expression wasn't worried, but rather irritated. The next footage showed the hospital parking lot on another day. As Richard got out of his car, another car parked nearby, and Vanessa emerged. They looked at each other, embraced without hesitation, and shared a long kiss. Shocked gasps rose from the audience. Richard and Vanessa sat frozen. The footage continued, showing them entering a hotel, having secret restaurant meetings, and most shockingly, a recording of Richard and Vanessa talking about Mary. "She's really oblivious," Vanessa's voice echoed through the hall. "She has no idea what we're doing. Mary's always thinking about her work," Richard's voice continued. "She was a mistake from the beginning. Compared to a beautiful woman like you." The venue was completely silent. As everyone held their breath, the footage continued. The caption, "Present," appeared. The screen showed Richard intimately interacting with another woman. The location was an upscale restaurant, and they were holding hands and sharing kisses. This footage is from 1 week ago, the narrator explained. Mr. Richard Williams is beginning a new relationship while continuing his relationship with his current girlfriend, Ms. Vanessa Smith. The footage continued, capturing Richard leaving the woman's apartment early in the morning. Vanessa's breathing became ragged, and she glared at Richard with furious eyes. But that's not all, the narrator continued. The next footage showed Richard's new girlfriend embracing another man. It seems Mr. Richard's new lover already has another partner. Gasps of surprise rose from the audience. Richard's face turned bright red, and Vanessa tried to stand up. But footage of her continued. Vanessa talking with her friends. Mary is truly pitiful. She'll never be loved by anyone, she was laughing. Taking Richard from her was just too easy. But don't you not love Richard? A friend's voice asked. Of course I don't, Vanessa answered. But he provides me with a luxurious lifestyle. Besides, it's always fun to take something from my sister. At those words, angry murmurs rose from the audience. Mary's colleagues glared at Vanessa with indignation. Vanessa turned pale and stood up, trying to leave the venue. Richard also stood up. However, security guards stood at the doors, quietly preventing their exit. Finally, the video showed Mary and Michael's first reunion. Their natural smiles at the restaurant, walks by the lake, and finally the moment of his proposal. Tears glistened in Mary's eyes as Michael gently embraced her. This footage tells everything, the narrator concluded. A relationship built on betrayal and lies, versus love based on truth and respect. Which one creates genuine happiness? The screen darkened, and the venue lights returned. Mary and Michael stood on the central stage. Michael stepped forward and said in a calm but powerful voice, "This footage speaks for itself." The venue fell silent. Richard and Vanessa stood speechless, unable to make excuses. Their faces showed a mixture of shame and anger. Michael continued, "I have loved Mary for many years. You all know what a wonderful person she is." He smiled gently at Mary. Her intelligence, kindness, and strength are recognized by everyone. He looked at Richard and Vanessa for a moment. However, these two mistook her gentleness for weakness and continued to betray her. They could only find their own value by hurting Mary. Mary quietly stepped forward. Her posture was dignified, and her eyes shone with determination. "Today, I want to celebrate my new life with all of you." Mary's voice was quiet but resonated throughout the venue. But at the same time, I needed to reveal the truth about the past. This isn't mere revenge, but a journey to the truth. She looked at Richard and Vanessa. "Your words can't hurt me anymore. Because I've come to know true love and respect." Mary took Michael's hand again. "I hope you'll remember our wedding not just as a celebration, but as a testament to truth and love." Loud applause erupted from the audience. Friends and colleagues stood up to congratulate the couple. Richard and Vanessa were isolated in a corner of the venue. Their expressions no longer showed mockery or superiority, only shame and defeat. "You may leave now," Mary said gently. "I'm no longer trapped in the past. And you can no longer hurt me." Richard looked at Vanessa, and for the first time noticed the coldness in her eyes. He said nothing, just nodded. Vanessa ignored him and tried to leave alone. "Vanessa," Mary called after her. "We're sisters. Perhaps someday we'll be able to talk again. When that time comes, I hope we can build a better relationship." Vanessa stopped and looked at Mary. Tears welled in her eyes. Whether from anger, shame, or regret, no one could tell. She said nothing and hurried toward the exit. Richard followed her, and they disappeared from the venue. Mary took a deep breath and squeezed Michael's hand more tightly. "It's over," she said in a small voice. "No," Michael smiled gently. "This is the beginning." The beginning of our real life. Mary smiled back. Her heart felt freed from the burden she had carried for 3 years. Now, let's have our first dance. Michael took her hand and led her to the dance floor. The orchestra began playing a beautiful melody, and Mary and Michael started dancing in each other's arms. Friends and family surrounded them, watching with smiles. Boston's autumn was beautiful. A year after Mary and Michael's wedding, they were enjoying morning coffee on the terrace of their new home along the Charles River. The autumn leaves swayed in the wind, shimmering in the morning sun. "I can't believe it's been a year already," Mary said, cradling her mug in both hands. 2 rings glistened on her finger. "It's been the best year," Michael smiled, placing his hand over hers. "Every day with you is a gift." Mary's expression was peaceful, without the shadows of anxiety or doubt that were once there. Her career as an accountant was also going well, and she had recently begun preparing to become an independent consultant for major corporations. Michael's IT company continued its rapid growth, and their life together was fulfilling. "What do you think about having children?" Mary suddenly asked. "I think we might be ready to consider it." A joyful expression spread across Michael's face. "Really? That's wonderful." They talked and laughed about their future. How they would raise their children, what values they wanted to impart. It was a conversation Mary could never have imagined before. "Sometimes I think about those too," Mary said quietly. Michael understood who she meant. "Have you heard anything recently?" he gently asked. Mary nodded slightly. "I heard from my mother. Richard apparently lost his job. They found he was misusing company funds." She sighed deeply. "And he also broke up with Vanessa. She's living with my mother now. Do you regret it?" Michael carefully studied her expression. "Showing that footage?" Mary shook her head. "No. I think it was necessary. But I'm thinking of contacting Vanessa. She is my sister," Mary said quietly. "I'm not angry anymore. Just sad." Michael looked at her with eyes that respected her decision. "Your kindness always amazes me. The revenge is over. I think it's time for healing now," Mary smiled. "Besides, we have a wonderful future ahead of us." That afternoon, they attended an event for a children's support foundation called Wings of Hope. Mary and Michael had recently begun donating to and supporting this foundation. Surrounded by the children's smiling faces, Mary felt genuine happiness. In the evening, back at home, Mary gathered her courage and made a phone call. After several rings, someone picked up on the other end. "Hello?" Vanessa's voice sounded tired. "Vanessa, it's me, Mary," she said quietly. "Can we talk?" After a moment of silence, Vanessa's trembling voice came back. "Mary." 2 broken relationships were slowly taking a step toward repair. Whether it would succeed, no one yet knew. But there was peace in Mary's heart. She had learned from past wounds, grown stronger, and found true love. That night, lying in bed, Mary thought in Michael's arms. Life is unpredictable and sometimes cruel. But sometimes, those hardships bring the most beautiful gifts.